think most of us know Lama Tenzin, but for those of us that are new here, Lama Tenzin was born in Tibet and became a monk at the age of 15. And he studied and resided at various monasteries in Tibet and in India until the year 2000, when he was invited to Canada by the first resident Lama, Lama Namse Rinpoche of Karmasoni Darjeeling, to assist him. And assist him he did, and very well, for 9 years until Lama Namse passed away. At that point, the 17th Karmapa, and at the wishes of Lama Namse, appointed Lama Tenzin as resident Lama. So it's going to be 10 years in a few weeks. Eh? Congratulations. Anyway, thanks very much. The talk will probably go till about 3:30. I know I've kind of pushed to 4, but that's because we usually have a translation. So this, we'll see how it goes. Did anybody not get a handout? You guys are doing. Hi. How are you? Great. Nice to see you. There you are. Right here.
Yundi Sanji Kundo Nyamna Yang, Gadu Sanji Lejo Lobengo, Bango Lame Jolo Jonda Lo, Dozo Dogo Lama Jolo Jolo, Wada Nyambe Sanji Sanji Lejo Lama Yang, Bawa Dogo San. Gomarum Buji Dobarza, Deji Do, Sambasa Juji Jola Sanji Vala Barza Dal, Deda Dembe Monega, Ige Barza Juji Ramban, Jose Sanji Sembe Juvara Juva Jizawa, Diyela. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Very happy to see you this afternoon. I think many of you I have never met you before, so I'm very happy to meet you for the first time on very good time of connection with this precious teaching on the Bodhisattva way of life, which is the most important teaching. Maybe you have received this teaching before because this particular teaching, the Bodhisattva way of life, is very, very common and very well known, popular teaching in Buddhism in India and also in Tibet. So this particular teaching is not really belongs to any tradition in India and also in Tibet, because the author of this teaching is his name is Shivala Shantideva. So he is one of the Indian great master scholar Bodhisattva. So this teaching, actually he wrote the root text in India, but this teaching have many commentaries. There are lots of commentaries from Indian masters and also in Tibetan Buddhist scholars, masters from all lineage. We have masters from our lineage, Kaju lineage, Gelug, Nyingma, Satya, and Chonang, and almost every tradition, every lineage, masters composed a commentary for this practice, this teaching. Basically, this teaching, it's all about Bodhisattva. I'm sure you all are familiar with this teaching, this topic, this practice. Maybe some of you already practiced, realized Bodhisattva on certain levels. So the Shantideva, maybe I will talk a little bit about Shantideva, not so much, just to give you background, because in Tibetan and Buddhism, always masters, when they give a teaching, they talk about the teaching that is, the author of the teaching, so that we know that this teaching is authentic, genuine Buddhist teaching, not just somebody created who have no education, no practice. So that's why, in order to people to understand that this is genuine teaching, authentic teaching that is accepted in the practice by many of those great masters in the past. So the Shantideva is actually a prince in southern part of India, and he came to Nalanda University in north the Nalanda University is one of or the most well-known, the most or the biggest Buddhist university in history, especially in India. So, which actually was university for many hundreds of years, probably over 1,000 years. So from this university achieved so many great scholars, masters, bodhisattvas. So when Shantideva came from South India, he was prince, and the king actually wanted him to be the, his a successor, and they wanted to appoint him, but he did not want to have that kind of life. So he went to Nalanda University and he studied there. And his kind of personality is he doesn't listen to anybody. So he was just stay in his room, and then nobody knows what he does. So the discipline master didn't like it. He was not happy with him. So they give him some sort of, it's not nickname, but it's the bad name. Who the monk who only eat, sleep, and walk. So, and then discipline master wanted to kick him out from the university, because he didn't think it's right for somebody who come and enjoy the offerings that people made for the monks who wanted to practice and who wanted to study. So, and then during that time in Nalanda University, all these scholars, masters, once in a while they had to read sutras. So then discipline master, he remembered a trick that he wanted to ask him to read the sutra. So Shantideva, he thinks that Shantideva know nothing. So then he has no, he's not qualified enough to read the sutra. So he will, voluntarily leave the monastery, leave the university. So he asked, the discipline master asked Shantideva to read sutra, and he didn't listen. Then Shantideva went to see the Kempo and asked to Shivala to read the sutra. So then eventually Shantideva accepted to read the sutra. So once he accepted, and then discipline master and these the people administrators, they made a huge throne and outside in the field. So when Shantideva came to the throne, nobody saw how he went up to this throne. They didn't even put a stairs to the throne. So he sat up on the throne, and then he asked everybody, you wanted me to read teaching that already there, or new one? And then everybody says, we want a new one. So then actually he began to read this Bodhisattva Avatara, the way of life, Bodhisattva way of life. So he was reading, and everybody was listening. So this has 10 chapters. The 9th chapter is about the Parjana Paramita. So when he came to middle of the Parjana Paramita section, actually he left up above the throne and went higher and higher, and slowly his body disappeared. And a lot of the disciples have seen a Manjushri in front of him. So then eventually his body disappeared, but the teaching was continued. So basically, historically, this is the the Shantideva's the life story or biography that is written in all the teachings, all the teachings of the masters. So sometimes it's people who haven't seen those kind of things, it's hard to believe, but this is how it written in his biography by great masters. So now this Bodhisattva Chaya Avatara have a 10 10 chapters. The main subject of this is Bodhicitta, practice on Bodhicitta, practice on compassion, and practice on loving kindness. It's a practice on compassion and practice on loving kindness, basically on Bodhicitta. So we all know what is Bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the heart, the altruism heart of the Bodhisattvas. The Bodhisattvas achieve Bodhisattva by achieving Bodhicitta through the practice on compassion and loving kindness. So the later, even in India and Tibet, this teaching becomes very well known teaching and lots of people practice it. So this one is actually, we even in Tibetan Buddhism use the principal teaching, the most practical teaching that they use to practice compassion and loving kindness. I mean Bodhicitta. So before we go into this teaching, because this teaching is actually not just ordinary teaching, even though the teacher itself is not well practiced or scholar, but I wanted to, every effort that we put in this teaching, listening for meaningful, which means we should try to apply all the necessary conditions into our practice. So, we as a Buddhist practitioner, and not only Buddhist but it's Mahayana practitioner, it is always important to have a genuine, pure motivation, which is always emphasized in every teachings of Buddhism. So that means that I am going to listen or teaching this teaching for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's very, very important always. So whatever practice we do, we always start with, for example, even we do a little sadhana, it begins with, may all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and cause of suffering. That is actually the fundamental principle practice of Buddhism, of Mahayana. So therefore, even during this time, I want you to think that this practice or listening, this actually action of listening and receiving teaching is for the benefit of all sentient beings, which means that the space have no limit. So therefore, sentient beings have no limit. All these unlimited sentient beings in this limitless space are actually experiencing lots of suffering. So by merit or power of this practice, I wanted to lead all the sentient beings from the samsara to a liberation stage, enlightened state. So basically, I am going to listening to reflect on, meditate on teachings of this genuine Dharma, particularly the Bodhisattva way of life, to liberate all sentient beings and achieve enlightenment. So this Shantideva's Bodhisattva way of life have three main sections. It has 10 chapters. But that 10 chapter is divided into 3 main sections, and all about the Bodhisattva. So the first 3 are the method to achieve Bodhisattva, and then the second 3 chapters are the method to remain this Bodhisattva, and then the next 3 chapters are to increase, to develop the Bodhisattva that you already achieved, Bodhisattva that you already preserved, maintained, but that's not enough. So therefore we need to develop, we need to increase. So these 3 are the last 9 chapters. 3 chapters are the methods to increase our Bodhisattva. So then the last one, out of 10 chapters, the last one is aspiration. So basically there are 10 chapters. So usually in this Bodhisattva way of life teaching, begin with they're talking about the different ways of teachings, the different type of teachers and how they teach, and then disciples, how we should listen the teachings. Usually the teachers, there are different categories: Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then ordinary teachings. But that's, it's not so much emphasized here, so that's why I'm not going through too much. But the one thing I wanted to mention here is the how usually we're supposed to listen the teachings. So when we listen the teachings, we have to emphasize on 2 things. The first one is our intention, and then the second one is our behave or conduct, because we have our mental state, and from the mental state or our mind, we have to purify our intention, analyze our intention, see if our intention is correct or not. We don't want to have any intention that is polluted, which does not help us to develop our bodhicitta and our compassion, our loving kindness. The intention that might lead into increase our desire, hatred, anger, and ego, and so on. If that happens, then our direction goes to wrong direction, right? Because those negative, if our intention is a negative emotion, afflictive emotion, then it will lead us to the state of suffering. These negative emotions lead us to, instead of developing our compassion, loving kindness, it will produce suffering. So that's what we don't want to have. That's why we have to analyze, we have to purify, see our intention, it's correct or not. So then there is behave or physical conduct, that we also be in a proper posture, proper stage. So it says when you listen the teaching, it should be free from 3 3 falls and 6 stains, So 3 falls, there are examples. A container, if you wanted to put something, let's say milk in container, you have to have a proper container that has no holes, that is clean, and then you have to put that proper way on stable ground or stable table. So when we listen the teaching, 3 what? False, yeah. The first example is upside down the container. Okay. The second one is the container with a hole underneath. And then third one is a container that has a poison inside. So meaning that when you listening teaching, if you're not focusing, no matter teacher how much time he spends, if you're not focusing, if you're not listening, then it's like put your container upside down and pouring your milk. Nothing goes in, you know. Even if you continue 24 hours, nothing will go in. So our container of our mind should be focused and listen, contemplate, listen the teachings. And then the second one is the container with holes, you know. And sometimes what happens when we listen to teaching, we do hear whatever teacher says. But then we don't keep in our mind, you know. You're maybe listening during the teaching, but as soon as teaching is end, nothing left. Means you really have to contemplate on the teaching. You know, not just hearing and going out. You know, sometimes when we listen people's talk that is not interested, you know, we hear, we listen, but we don't give any interest and focus, so you never remember again, you know. But if the talks are interesting, if you listen carefully, and then it'll stay and you remember. So the next one is, the last one is actually very important, the container with the poison. Meaning that you're listening, teaching properly, carefully, you're understanding everything, but if your intention is wrong, you know, if you're listening, teaching, especially for the Bodhisattva way of life, our intention is to develop our compassion, to develop our loving kindness, eventually Bodhisattva, achieve enlightenment, and for the benefit of all sentient beings. But instead of having intention like that, we may have our intention is, I wanted to listen these teachings so that I know more, and so that I can, you know, I will have a name of a scholar, or I can collect disciples. You know, if you're listening for name, fame, power, a position, all these, it will be wrong intention. As ordinary sentient being, ordinary people, we do have these things, but it's when we remember these things, we should try to convert, try to change into pure motivation, you know. Usually, a lot of people, we are not enlightened beings. We are not perfect people. We have faults, mistakes, and we have enemies, a lot of people who we don't like, you know. So it happens. It's a reality. It doesn't mean you're bad people. But as soon as we realize it, or as soon as we hear these things, it should try to convert, change, transform into the pure motivation. So that's very important. So I think I'll just talk about live with these three things, and then we go to next topic. Next continue of actual teaching. So if you look in this text, it says, maybe you don't have that part, but it's in Tibetan it says Jagarkedu, you know, means in Indian language it called Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. In Tibetan, so this one is happens for only teachings that translated from India to Tibet. So usually like in Tibet we have over 100 books or volumes of Buddha's teaching, which is Buddha's teaching that translated into Tibetan we call Kanjur. So a little over 100 volumes. And then there are over 200 volumes of commentaries to the Buddha's teaching that are composed by Indian masters, Indian scholars, translated into Tibetan, and we call that Tenjor, Kanjor and Tenjor. The Buddhist teaching that translated from Indian language, Sanskrit or Pali into Tibetan language is over 300 books, 300 volumes. So the translators, when they did translation, always they put Indian language, the title, and then Tibetan language. It says that the reason why they did is because it shows the teaching came from the original, teaching that is translated, the taught in either Sanskrit or Pali. And also it has the blend, that language, particular, the Sanskrit have a special blessing that the masters, Buddhas, when they taught, composed this language, have a special blessing to gather that blessing, and also to show this is genuine teaching that coming from right source. Bodhisattva Charya Avratara, and in Tibetan language is Chanchu Sambichu Balanjuba. So then the next line, it says Sanjeta Chanchu Sambala Chansalo, means I prostrate to Buddhas and Bodhisattva. That's also written by the translator, not the actual author. So that also comes in all those teachings that translated into Tibetan language. So it says I prostrate to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So the reason why translators do that is to do prostration to these great beings, so that his translation can be pure translation can be complete without obstacles. So there are usually, according to tradition, there are 3 ways to do this prostration. Maybe it's not so important for you, but in the teachings, in Buddhist teaching, we have 3 different subjects, mainly 3 different subjects. That's called Vinaya, Abhidharma, and what do you call it? Sutra. There are 3 main teachings in Buddha's over 100 volume. They consist in 3 main, and then Buddha says these 3 main subjects include 84,000 teachings. So these 3 main subjects are actually antidote to the 3 main negative emotions that sentient beings have, like desire, hatred, and ignorance. So when translators translate into this, if this teaching that they're translating belongs to the Vinaya, they prostrate to only Buddha, because all the Vinaya details and vows and so on, these things are only Buddha's wisdom understands. Nobody else understand totally. So therefore prostrate to the Buddhas, only Buddhas. And then if this particular teaching belongs to Abhidharma, and Abhidharma, it's all about emptiness, wisdom. So the Manjushri is the wisdom deity, so that's why they always prostrate to the Manjushri if the teaching belongs to Abhidharma. So if the teaching belongs to Sutra, the Sutra is usually all asked questions and answers, like the Arhats and Bodhisattvas, they ask Buddha. For example, we have Heart Sutra, the Avalokiteshvara asked Buddha Shakyamuni, and then he answered the questions. So lots of sutras composed that way. So that's why if that particular teaching belongs to Sutra, and the translators prostrate to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So this one says Sanjeta Chanchu Sambatham Jala Chansalos, he prostrate to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So this is the Bodhisattva way of life is maybe it's a part of the part of sutra teaching. So then after that there is actual Bodhisattva way of life, and starting with also homage to higher beings. So Shantideva, he homage to, and if you look in this, the first line, it says, I'm not sure if this translation is very good translated. With devotion, I pray homage to the Buddhas, gone to bless their Dharma body, noble what?
Heirs.
Noble heirs and all worthy of respect. In accordance with the scriptures, I shall now I brief describe the way to adopt the discipline of all the Buddha's heirs. So here he also made the homage. The Shantideva made homage to three jewels. So you see three jewels, Buddhas. The first one is a Buddha, and Buddha, well, you know, in actually this in Tibetan word it's a dershik. Dershik means peacefully gone, you know, smoothly gone. Means it means Buddha. Buddhas are smoothly or peacefully gone from samsara, where there are tremendous pain, suffering and unhappy, to state of enlightenment. So basically it means enlightened beings. The fully enlightened beings, those are the only Buddhas. So then the next word is the Dharma. You know, Dharma is the teaching that Buddha composed. You know, as I say, there he composed 84,000 teachings that are antidote to 84,000 different negative emotions that sentient beings have. So then the next one is Se Dang Jie, means this in Se Dang Jie in English, is it disciples? No. How did you translate here?
The Buddhist heirs, so the Sangha?
Did it say Sangha somewhere here?
It doesn't, it says the Buddhist heirs, those who inherited.
What does Buddhist heir means?
Those who inherited the teachings.
So here, yes, here means Sangha. So in particular this teaching, usually like we have a Sangha, two different Sangha, you know. Arya Sangha means the Sanghas who already achieve certain level of bhumis. Like in the first bhumi, in order to be part of Arya Sangha, the supreme Sangha, you have to achieve at least the first bhumi. So, and here, here the Shantideva homage to these three jewels, but the Sangha is only Arya Sangha here. Sangha who achieve Bodhisattva, you know, Bodhisattvas, Jangchup Sin. The only those who achieve the Jangchup Sin, the Bodhisattva, not ordinary Sanghas. So the next part is so in chapters it says Tsombar Tamjawa means promise or commitment to teach. So here and in the translation, there is nothing here that is not being said before. And I have no skill in the art of composition. Therefore, I do not expect this to be of much use others. And to write it only to acquaint it to my mind. So here what he says is in the 10 chapters of the Bodhisattva way of life teaching is not something completely new that the past Buddhas and Bodhisattvas never taught. If Buddhas and Bodhisattvas never taught, then it can be the wrong teaching. You know, he's clarifying. Because if there's a teaching that he doesn't mean that the wording, exactly wording, he's talking about the meaning, he's talking about the subject. So the compassion or the Bodhisattva, Buddha already taught so many times in so many different ways to so many different disciples. As a result, they are great Bodhisattvas who achieve by practicing this teaching. So therefore, it's not something that has never been taught. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas already taught. So therefore, you should not expect that this will completely something new that you have never seen or you have never heard. And then he said, maybe some people will think that this might have a very, artistic way of a writing, like it's, what do you call it, poem? Yeah, but I don't have that skill. So if you're looking for that, then this is wrong teaching. Because what I emphasize in this teaching is the meaning and not the word, So I'm not great writer, poet. Art of poetry. So if you're expecting something like that, it's wrong. So you should emphasize, you should expect the meaning, you should look for the meaning, not the word. And then he said that, he says, I am not a great bodhisattva. So this one is the next part. In our tradition, and Tibetan tradition, Buddhist tradition, all those great masters, they always sort of, in order not increase their egos, so they always try to be humble, Even if you are a great scholar, they say, no, I know nothing. No, I don't know, no. But now, here, this century is completely different. If you say, I don't know, oh well, then I have to go to somebody else. There's no way of saying, I'm sure you know, please teach me. No, people don't say that. And I have to tell, I have learned this from this master, I went to this school and stuff. Now I know and you should listen to me and you shouldn't go to anywhere else. If I say, I don't know much about this, then say, oh, he doesn't know. You think he doesn't know. Yeah, it's a different time. So that time, and Buddhist scholars, they never say I know. So it's sometimes if you say like I know this and I know that, and then eventually that come into your mind, that your ego increases, your competition, desire, all those increases. So in order to be humble, to keep all this, some of those negative emotions that are problem. So that's why he said, I don't have this great realization of compassion. So that's why I didn't teach this, because I expect this will benefit so many sentient beings. And then the next question, the question is, then why you teach this? And then he says, well, I teach this just to practice, just to develop my own compassion. So to the meaning, the profound meaning of Bodhisattva and Bodhisattva to cultivate, to develop within myself. So I taught it and I composed this teaching. So the next one is it's called Troachipa, means rejoicing. So what he says here is, well, I'm not going to read this English because I'm not good at reading English. Do you think this translation is good?
It's not. It's I have a really good one. I'll bring it next week from when Karmapa did his speech in New York. It's a
No, I mean the translation of actual the root text. That's important, right?
It's better
Yeah.
to hear the
It,
direct
it, it's okay. It's,
translation.
I was just saying that.
It's better to hear you translate it from the Tibetan. It's one step closer, I think.
Yeah.
So then he said, if there are somebody who is similar to me, who has a similar understanding, similar karma, similar achievement, when they heard this teaching, it may benefit. Because the teaching of Bodhisattva, Buddhist way of life, Bodhisattva way of life, is so profound. So whoever it hears the teaching, it plants the seed of enlightenment, plants the seed of Bodhisattva, planting the seed of compassion, and planting the seed of loving kindness. Basically, the planting the seed of achieving enlightenment, planting the seed of free from samsara and suffering. So the next one is actual teaching. You know, there's the prostration part and commitment, rejoicing. So now he's talking about the actual teaching. So actual teaching is starting with also base, you know, base of the Bodhisattva life. So in order to practice or in order to develop Bodhisattva, we need proper base. So here he explained we needed two base, physical base and mental base. The physical base is, he's talking about the precious human life, you know. We have heard that precious human life from many different teachings. Julo-normative liberation, what am I perfecting? There's every teachings emphasize so much in this precious human life. In order to practice the compassion, without this precious human life, we cannot achieve the Bodhisattva, we cannot achieve enlightened beings, we cannot achieve Buddha. So that's why it is important to have this. But we have to realize, we have to understand how difficult it is to achieve, and now we have this precious life, we should make it useful and use for me something that is meaningful. So it says free and well-favored human form. So usually in the traditional teachings, they're free means you have to free from 10 or 8 what do you call 8 8
Fetters?
8 obstacles. What is this? What's the thing? Kaleo. Free from 8. There's basically Tanjor. In Tibetan it says Tanjor. Tar means free. Jor means achieve. So basically, in order to be a precious human life, which is proper foundation, ground for developed our practice, our compassion, so we need to have these 18 qualities. 18 qualities. The first, free from 8 things. Nyewa means you have to free from hell. Yida, hungry ghost, animal, demigod, Nyewa, Yida, Tando, Lalo, Lalo, barbaric, Nyewa, Yeda, Tundro means hell, hungry ghost, animal, Lalo, barbaric, Lota, wrong view, long life God, Lota, wrong view, and then Kupa means completely dumb, who doesn't understand, who can't read, who can't listen. So there are 8 things that we have to free from, and then you have to achieve 10 what do you call it,
Favorable circumstances.
achieve 10 conditions. Yes, there are 10. That's the first 5 you have to achieve from yourself, and there's 5 that have to achieve from others. So the meni wichi wambo chang leta malo nelate. Is that the first 5? Okay, the first one that we have to achieve from our side is you have to be inhuman, you have to be born in center, what means where there is Dharma teachings. You have to have all these proper, faculties or senses. Lejitamalo means you have to have a connection. And then there's a 5 one that has to come from others, which are Sanje Sue, means Buddha come, Dharma remain, Buddha taught, Dharma remain, Sanje Sue, the teachers of Tebane. Then you have to be a follower, and then you have to have outer conditions to practice the Dharma. But basically these things you can go to different online or search or different teachings. It's not easy to find, but there's maybe not much point for us to spend a lot of time on these. So basically it is what we have to know is the precious human life that is very, very important. It's very, very difficult to achieve. So that's one thing. Sometimes we forget that, because wherever we go and we see people, and people think there are too many people. When people talk about the 7 billion people, a lot of people, yeah? Tibetans always have a problem with not enough people, only 6 million. But if you go to India and China, you always feel that there are too many people. I mean, if you look carefully, the human life is very difficult to achieve. So here it says, explained why and how human life is so difficult to achieve. They use 3 different Je means the cause, and then example, and then number. The je means in order to achieve a precious human life like we have, it actually doesn't just happen without cause and conditions. So human life need a cause that is in Tibetan we say Jutsutam Nambartawa, means moral discipline. And then based on moral discipline, it requires the practice on 6 perfections. When you have these, then you have the cause to have a precious human life. But if we don't practice if we don't follow, keep the discipline, if we don't practice on 6 perfections, we may not be born as a human life, precious human life. That's the cause. And then second one is example, the comparing. So we know that the number of human beings is very little. You can count it, but if you look in other beings, other lives that who flies, lives that who live in the water and earth, and innumerable. So there's no number. When we compare to animals, even if you like in the summertime, if you lift up one stone in the field, you will see millions of what do you call it? Insect. So many. So, and in many ways, if you look in many areas, the human being is not a lot. Human being is very little number. We can count it. But then, the precious human life, not just being human, is actually not enough. Then, we talk about the 18 qualities. You have to be born where Buddha came. Buddha teach. That remain the teachings that you have to follow. So basically out of 7 billion, there's very little people who follow the teaching and practice. So then the next part is number is already done. And then usually we say Lu means body with Tamjur, free from these 8, and then achieve these 10 other qualities. And then mind, another base is the mind, right? Mind, Lu Tamjur Nam Sim Teba Nam Sum. So mind that has to have a 3 faith or devotion. So the 3 devotion is we have like Dvipateva, Pangviteva, Yichiviteva. And the first devotion is Tawa, means you are seeing Buddhas and Dharma and Sangha are good, you see the goodness and the qualities of the Buddhas and Dharma. And then second one is wanting to achieve them. Not only that you seeing them as a good so that you just pay respect, but you really wanted to achieve. And then the last one is the devotion of a faith, trust. So now you completely trust that if you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and you'll be safe, you'll be achieve enlightenment, you have a fully trust, confident. So these three devotions are important. So the compassion, I mean the Bodhisattva, in Shantideva it says, what is it in this translation? Like a flash of lightning on a dark and cloudy night, which for just a single instant shed is a brilliant light, rarely through the Buddha's power, a mind of virtue arise briefly, the people of the world. So what it's saying is actually having this pure mind or pure quality Bodhisattva mind is very, very difficult. It says, and yet we do have this good mind comes once in a while. So for example, use the example, in Tibetan calendar, the 29th day of the month is always dark, you know, because the full moon is full there, and then that is the 15th day of the lunar month. Then it becomes darker and darker. The end of the month, very dark. So in that dark night, raining, you know, the plus dark night called raining, you can't see anything. But all of a sudden, if there's a lightning, during that lightning, you see everything so bright, but the time is very short. So it says in samsara, we have a darkness of ignorance and all those negative emotions. So we don't see the pureness and the genuine and the real quality of enlightened potential that we already have in our mind. But once in a while we have this genuine motivation, genuine intention comes. So when it comes, you should not let it go, should catch right away. Hold on to this and then practice. Because it doesn't really happen all the time. Like we have a dark night so many days every month and every year. The lightning comes once in a while, you know. So similarly, our genuine motivation, the good heart, pure heart, the intention of practice the Dharma usually doesn't happen. When it comes, part of the blessing of a Buddha, it happens once in a while. When it comes, we should really catch it and hold on to it in practice. So that's what it says. That's a so the next one is it says even though we do have the virtues taught, you know, I want to do practice this, you know, you wanted to cultivate merit, you want to free from suffering and practice window, practice this and that. But these kind of intention or the power of this, the virtues taught are so weak, and then the power of negative emotions are so powerful, so strong. So these little virtues taught cannot overcome or cannot wash or cannot transform these negative emotions. But the Bodhisattva mind, once you get the Bodhisattva mind, then no matter how powerful these negative emotions, negative thought, it can remove, it can wash away, it can transform, you know. So that's why the Bodhisattva is so important. It says, it says only the Buddha's mind can do that. Buddha's mind here means actually Bodhisattva mind. Bodhisattva mind, or what do you call it? The Bodhisattva, yeah. I can say Bodhisattva is even more powerful than Buddha, because all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all enlightened beings, they achieve their realization through practice on Bodhisattva, through practice on compassion and loving kindness. If they did not have a practice of compassion, Bodhisattva, they would not achieve enlightenment. So therefore, basically the main cause and conditions of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is the compassion, Bodhisattva. So then we say, how do you know that Bodhisattva is so powerful, so strong? Then it says, actually, we as an ordinary sentient being, we don't know it, we have never seen it. But all those Buddhas in the past, so many eons, through their experience, Buddha's realization, they have achieved that, they have experienced. So therefore, the Buddhas always express how important, how powerful this Bodhisattva mind is. The Buddha said, if you have this Bodhisattva, and then Dencho means the supreme happiness, the highest happiness, the blessing, is easily achieved if you have this Bodhisattva. But if you don't have a Bodhisattva, we have different practices. Those practices may free you from lower realms, hell, hungry ghost, animal. They may be cause you to be born in the human realm, even achieve arhats, shavaka, self-liberation, those the first steps of the arhats. But if you don't have this Bodhisattva mind, the enlightened, the ultimate liberation, the highest destination, we will never get. So what I wanted to mention earlier was out of 10 chapters, the first 3 I said to achieve Bodhisattva mind, the way of achieve Bodhisattva mind. But the first one, the first chapter, it's a chapter about the benefit of Bodhisattva. So that's why it's going on and on about how important that Bodhisattva is. So then the next steps, how do you get this, So the next chapter is actually Shapa, means confession through 7 branches practice, 7 branch offering practices. So in this first chapter is all about the benefit of practice on Bodhisattva, achieve Bodhisattva. So that's why repeating, sometimes you feel like repeating over and over, but in a different ways. So to achieve Bodhisattva, there's no different, either you're male or female, there's no different, either you're old or young, there's no discrimination on race. So whoever practice, and it will achieve the Bodhisattva. So it also, Shantideva says, once you achieve that Bodhisattva, if you, he doesn't mean that you become Bodhisattva, you know, Bodhisattva, but the Bodhisattva mind, it comes in a stage, right? So first we have the ordinary Bodhisattva mind through the compassion, practice on compassion and the loving kindness. Then slowly you developed. At the same time, you graduate these paths and bhumis. When it comes to first bhumi, and then you call yourself, you're entitled to call yourself Bodhisattva. It says, but when you get the slice, little tiny Bodhisattva, sometimes you can call Bodhisattva. What he means is that from now until now, we have been ordinary sentient beings, but now you're on the first step of being Bodhisattva. So now, Shantideva explained how important this Bodhisattva with 5 examples. He used 5 different examples how important this Bodhisattva is. So the first example is the gold. I think it's a different type of gold, because what he said was the Bodhisattva is like a gold. Maybe that time they have a special gold, I don't know. He says this gold we call senjur zi. If you put that gold into 1,000, 1 pound, 1 pound of that gold, if you put in 1,000 pounds of other metals, spontaneously all the metals transform to gold. Similarly, the Bodhisattva mind, like we are ordinary sentient beings with what? All negative afflictive emotions. We have anger, hatred, jealousy, and all those negative emotions. But once you have this Bodhisattva, just like that gold changed 1,000 pounds of metals into gold, so this Bodhisattva convert all these negative emotions into gold. Into Bodhisattva. So basically, he's telling that this is how much it's powerful. The Bodhisattva. So the first example is that gold. Rinpoche So the next one is example of wish fulfilling jewel. Boundless wisdom, being only guide, have investigated thoroughly and seen its value, as whoever longs for freedom from condition, state, grasp his precious Bodhisattva and regard with well. So the next example is it's not a jewel, but it's So there is a jewel. What do you call it? Sometimes these examples are complicated because they have been maybe the 1500 years ago. So it's a different. Maybe it doesn't. Hey, what Shantideva said was, and people to get cross the ocean to get wish fulfilling jewel. Once they get the wish fulfilling jewel, and then they, everything they wishes, they will get it. But when they go to wish fulfilling jewel, there is an expert. Always they have to ask him or her, that expert, if this is genuine jewel, wish fulfilling jewel. If he or she said this is the one, then everybody believes. Then if he approved, then they get the right jewel. Madwana jiti pun chibu dendra da sanje nyeje tseme pele de tamje jibi shi ji long term ba le por yong ste kamarta na tamje chibu na sanje su sanje to por enjoy na jumbo cheve de pinto chewa sehin does not. So the Bodhisattva, in order to, I don't know how to translate. I wish I have a translator. Oh, sorry. I have to do slowly, okay? So the Bodhisattva is like the expert. Once you get the Bodhisattva, then every practice that you do, and Bodhisattva carries all those and transform into genuine and pure practice. Even if you have practices that does not have a genuine motivation, or that has some mistakes. But once you apply, once you have achieved that Bodhisattva, then all the others spontaneously transform into pure, a genuine practice, a genuine path to achieve enlightenment. So that's second example. And third example is it's a tree, So if we have a practice, let's say, because we have all kind of practices. We can do prostration, we can reciting prayers, and chanting, circumambulation, and all kind of practices. And these practice will give you a result of achieving better life, better human life, or God realm, be born in God realm. But these have a power to produce the result only once. For example, the banana tree, I think it's a banana tree, yeah? The banana tree, if you grow once, produce the fruit once, and then you have a no further, then it's dead, then tree is dead. Is that right? Yeah. But there is something else called Paksam Junshin. Paksam Junshin is what? Marvelous tree of what is this? There's another tree. What did it say? Giwa yin kwe chushin yin dene. Dewe chi na separan jirwani. Sanchuk sanchi jun yin tawaya dewe jiba mazi pewaran jirwas. Wishing tree, wishing tree, or whatever tree that is, always produce the fruit, but every year more and better and fresh. So the practice that does not accompany with the bodhicitta, of course, has a result. You may be born in human life, God realm, or even our hearts. But once produce that result, then there is no power to continue, you know. But that the bodhicitta is like other tree. Always the power increases. The interest increase all the time of the bodhicitta, you know. If you produce better life or arhat, bodhisattva, until reach enlightenment, the benefit or power of the bodhicitta always grows, always increase. Because it says like, you know, when we talk about the dedication, right? No matter how much practice you have done, if you miss the dedication, I mean, if you don't dedicate that merit that you accumulate, and that it does not continue benefit. But once you dedicate that merit to all sentient beings, then it's like this tree. They always produce. It always increase the power, make you better. I mean, you know, ultimately, what you have to do is your mind develop, right? The compassion, the essence of your mind is a compassion. We do have that essence. We do have that potential. But doesn't necessarily mean we always develop that in the right direction. Because we caught up with the mundane life, you know, with negative emotions, then it leads us to the completely different direction, although we have such precious potential. But if we cultivate the right cause and the right conditions to develop our potential, which is actually basically the fundamental compassion, the bodhicitta, in the right direction, then we all have the opportunity to achieve bodhisattva, to achieve Buddha. So the next one is a powerful guide. The example is a powerful guide. For example, if you killed somebody's father, but that person is gonna give you punish, right? They're gonna punish you. But if you have a very strong bodyguard, very powerful bodyguard with you, and then that person cannot punish you because that person is too weak. So you can still, you know, go and live because that guard can protect you. He is so powerful, so strong. So the bodhicitta is like a guard. Even though you have done the worst, the negative karma, like sometimes we call it heinous crimes, you know, like killing father, mother, killing bodhisattva, all those. Still, if you have a bodhicitta, practice on bodhicitta, it can, you know, overcome those, the worst negative karma, the heinous crime, even heinous crime can remove by the bodhicitta. So the next one is like a fire, not ordinary fire. It says the fire of end of eon, you know. And according to some of the Buddhist scripture, this world end by burning, you know, by fire. Like it says, the sun becomes slowly multiplies to 7 and then burns. So powerful. So it says Bodhisattva is powerful like that. So these, you know, fire can burn everything, whole universe in a few seconds. So the Bodhisattva mind, if you have a Bodhisattva, all the sentient beings, the countless sentient beings in this limitless space, with a limitless negative emotions, but one single Bodhisattva can change everything. So that these are the 6 examples: the gold, the tree, the guard, the fire, are the examples how Bodhisattva is powerful, strong, and beneficial. So now is actual Bodhisattva. What is actual Bodhisattva? Talking about actual Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva have we have a relative Bodhisattva and ultimate Bodhisattva. Ultimate Bodhisattva is not something that ordinary beings can perceive or practice. Ultimate Bodhisattva is a result of relative Bodhisattva. Once we accomplish the relative Bodhisattva completely, where we cut our Tenzin, the self, self-clinging, that's where your Bodhisattva, the ultimate Bodhisattva, arrive. But here, the relative Bodhisattva also have two different, two steps. What did it say? The Bodhisattva in aspiration bring about great result. No. Is it right? No. Just as one understands the difference between wishing to go and setting out upon journey, the wise should understand these two, recognizing their difference. Okay, so these two Bodhisattva are aspiration Bodhisattva and actual Bodhisattva. So one is motivation, and again, the aspiration Bodhisattva is the motivation, and aspiration Bodhisattva, or what do you call it?
The mind aspiring to awaken.
Janju, remember some. One is like the two steps. The intention is the aspiration Bodhisattva, and then actual practice is the Jupa, application Bodhisattva. So these difference, actually there are many different masters. They express in different ways. Like in Shantideva says, aspiration Bodhisattva is like if you wanted to go to somewhere, let's say there's a destination that you wanted to go, your mindset to go there. So your intention, your preparation is the aspiration bodhicitta. And then the cultivating bodhicitta is actually you are leaving your house and taking the car, driving or whatever. That is actual bodhicitta. So here in practice in bodhicitta, what we do is okay, all sentient beings are in samsara, and there are so much suffering in samsara. So now I, as an ordinary being, I cannot do anything to liberate them from suffering, samsara, but I am going to practice on all those steps, 6 paramitas, to achieve enlightenment so that I can benefit all these sentient beings. So that is aspiration bodhicitta. And then the next step is now you are actually practicing generosity, practicing discipline, practicing patience, practicing diligent practice on concentration and practice on wisdom. Actual practice on the 6th perfection is the actual practice. So there are different masters can explain in a different ways. And sometimes some masters says the ordinary sentient beings practice on bodhicitta is the aspiration, and then arhat, supreme beings like those who achieve first bhumi, second bhumi, their practice on bodhicitta is yupa. Yupa means actual cultivating bodhicitta. So some masters says during the tsoglam, means path of entering, all your bodhicitta practices are the inspiration practice. But when you come to actual path, jorlam, that is cultivating bodhicitta. So however it is, the aspiration bodhicitta is actually looking for the result. When you do inspiration bodhicitta, you're looking for the result, enlightenment. But cultivating bodhicitta is not looking for the result, you're looking for the journey, because you're looking for practice on those generosity, moral discipline, patience and concentration and so on. You understand? How much left?
Is it going to be question time? It's 3:37.
Okay, I think we can stop here and ask some questions. I was actually planning to finish this whole thing, but maybe it's better to go slowly. So you can ask questions, and we can do some discussion.
I have a question.
Okay.
Bodhicitta means the aspiration that all beings attain enlightenment, right?
Bodhicitta actually means it's your achievement. Bodhicitta is actually achievement, but that has 2 levels: ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. So So relative bodhisattva have inspiration bodhisattva and cultivating bodhisattva. There's two different steps. But of course, the ultimate aim or our goal is to achieve enlightenment.
Or is it for us to achieve enlightenment or for other beings to achieve enlightenment?
You know, there is 3 different ways of practicing bodhisattva. There's 3 examples. One is like Japotawe Simji, means you practice bodhisattva like a king. And then Lugzatawe Simji means practice bodhisattva like shepherd. And then there is practice bodhisattva like what do you call Trutangit color, Trutangit. Shepherd, who boatman who operate the boat. Yeah, the captain. Yes, yeah. So the first one, the practice like a king means you achieve enlightenment first, and then you benefit beings. Okay, that's practice bodhisattva like a king. And then second one is shepherd. What shepherd does is like you go whole day with them. You go with them actually first. I know because I was shepherd in Tibet. Yeah. We have lots of sheep. You take the sheep to the valley, and then first you see where it's better grass, where it's better water that they can drink. If they all got their water and grass, then you sit down and eat your food. And also you watch them if there's any the wolves or coyotes coming to eat them. You always have to aware. But the first you have to let them settle and then you sit. But the king is different, eh? The first you achieve enlightenment and then you help the people. So shepherd is first, like for example, Avalokiteshvara is like a shepherd. He said, until the whole samsara is empty, I will not achieve enlightenment. The Chinese is like that. He would not achieve enlightenment until the samsara is completely empty. So he is always a bodhisattva. But then the captain is together from the one shore to another shore. All the passengers or whatever you call, whoever is in a ship, boat, whoever is in a boat, the captain and people, they leave at the same time, they get there at the same time. So there are some bodhisattvas. During my practice, I wanted to benefit all sentient beings, but I want to achieve enlightenment at the same time all the sentient beings achieve enlightenment. There are 3 different ways. So it's all basically the same. Whoever first goes, you're going there, it's for them. Or if you stay, let them send them and you're going to get there eventually.
And the shepherd lets them go first?
Yeah. Shepherd, it's like Chinese is like that. Until all the sentient beings achieve enlightenment, I will not become Buddha. So that's why he has 1,000 eyes and 1,000 arms looking at them, so that everything is safe, everybody is, getting into right direction. One eye is not enough, 2 eyes is not enough. Yeah.
I have another question. How do you know it's the right direction if you haven't been there? Like, how does Shinrei
The one thing is, it says, one thing is we do based on scriptures, Buddha scripture. Okay, so Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who already been there, Buddha practiced the Dharma and he achieved enlightenment. Then he taught the teaching. So he taught how he been there. If you go the same way, and guarantee you will be where I am. And Buddha already been there, he has experience. That's why he taught. If you want to be a doctor, how do you know the doctor is so important, or lawyer? Because there are other doctors and lawyers already been there and they're helping there and they're successful. So if we follow Buddha's and Bodhisattva's teaching, we will get there. But then, not only that, the practice and compassion, and loving kindness and Bodhisattva, it's so obvious, eh? So we know that our fundamental essence. I have heard recently Dalai Lama was teaching and he was using an example. And he said he was watching a video. Maybe that's some type of scientist experiment, He says there's two little babies. And one is trying to push up a ball upward. And other one is helping. No, actually not two babies, no. Two people are doing that. One is trying to push up the ball and other one is trying to help him. And and a screen, okay? And the little baby is watching that. So whenever that other person is helping the guy to push up the ball, that the little baby smiles and laughs. And then there's another part, the man trying to push up that ball, another man trying to pull it down and try to disturb that. And whenever I see that part, the baby cries. So that shows that your essence, even if you don't know how to describe, but your essence is not a negative, not anger, not hatred. Your essence is a compassion and loving kindness. We just need to build that into that direction. But sometimes because we don't have that proper teaching, proper advice, and then world is so caught up with the competition, anger and hatred and jealousy. And there's thousands and millions of ways to increase our desire, So maybe slowly we lose that opportunity, but our basic fundamental aim. For example, if you look at somebody's face, when I look at your face, if all of you give me bad luck, let's say, be so serious, if you be so serious, automatically it make me unhappy. But if everybody is smiling, automatically make me happy, So that shows that anger make you unhappy, or the angry looking, and then happy and smile looking make you happy. So that's so obvious, And we know nobody like to get angry. Nobody like to, not smile. And we like to smile. We happy. We enjoy when we smile. But when we fight, when we argue, and those things, it always makes unhappy, So that shows that what we really want is a happiness and smile and that positive part, not the negative one. Eventually, if you look at those people, some people who practice compassion, loving kindness, they're always happy and smile. They are ready to do anything for other people. basically the fundamental things, it comes into our, ego, selflessness, those part are fundamental thing to understand. But those great practitioners, eventually, they only sees the other people, what they need, He or she is ready to do anything, ready to give up whatever you have to. They don't care about you much. That shows your compassion, developing your compassion, your Bodhisattva. This one has died. No battery. Okay, now you can ask questions. And we will.
At what point does an arahat realize that he needs the bodhicitta attitude?
Our hearts, I'm not quite sure, but what Buddha said is our hearts are the stage where they can rest before they go to enlightenment. So the power of their practice and slowly actually realizing for them to practice Bodhisattva. But they already have a all the practice foundation, they already achieve arhat, which is actually very close.
It's really purified.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, Lama, what is the best way to practice compassion? Are there many ways, or is there one specific way?
I think reading the Bodhisattva way of life gives you so much information about how precious Bodhisattva is. Because, we need to know that, eh? We need to really know how important it is. For example, in Gampopa taught teaching called Jewel Ornament of Liberation. The first thing that he taught was Buddha nature. The reason why he taught Buddha nature right from the beginning is because that gives us hope. Our hope is to achieve enlightenment, to achieve better life, to achieve arhat or bodhisattva. But somehow we need to know, before you go to school, you need to know if you study something, you will get a better job. But if you don't know that, then we wouldn't going into school to learn, because you know what you get if you do this. So it's important to know what is bodhicitta, what is benefit of a bodhicitta. So it explained here very well. And then when it comes to next steps, how you take bodhisattva vows, and then how you purify your negative karmas, how to develop bodhicitta. So then of course we have a simple practices. Like, we have four immeasurable thought, four immeasurable practices. May all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. But then there are different steps. We have in the Buddhism, Junje Menga Dun. Sometimes some people can't accept that part, because the Junje Menga Dun it's a method to develop your compassion, loving kindness, but using your mother or father is the most important person for your life. Okay? So the first step is you have to know every sentient being has been your father or your mother or your closest one, right? So then we have to understand, while they are our parents or mother, they gave us so much life and everything. They sacrificed so much. So now it's a time for me to repay back. I have this opportunity to benefit them, so I practice, I help them. So then it slowly you develop that into compassion, loving kindness. There's 7 different steps. But important thing is compassion, Bodhisattva. You cannot practice just by yourself. I mean, without thinking about other sentient beings. So masters say the sentient being is as important as a Buddhas. Buddha is so important because Buddha gave us those teachings, show us the path, how to achieve enlightenment. But in order to practice the Dharma, generosity is the first thing. You cannot give yourself things, only yourself. It not be complete generosity. You need other beings. And then patient. When you are in your room, you have no problem. You have no anger, no jealousy, no hatred, anything. But when you come out, then you will realize a little different from when you were sitting in your room with everything is fine. So, and all the things has to do practice with other sentient beings. So other sentient beings equally important. So that's why may all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they free from suffering and cause of suffering. But this practice is very important. Of course, it's not so easy, not so easy for ordinary sentient beings. But as long as if you have that understanding, that whatever you can do, even if you cannot just practice compassion right away, but your aim is going towards that direction, That's important. So I will suggest that, I don't know if there's any other translations.
There is. That book you have is really nice. I think I have it too. So next week we'll work on getting some improved translation. And we'll print this one out again.
But that's not the translator.
Pemakara translation. Okay, that's good. This is the root text, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same, different cover.
There are also lots of other commentaries too. I think the total for Bodhisattva way of life has over 60 commentaries from Tibetans and also Indian masters. Some commentaries are so long that sometimes you get lost. You don't know where they're talking, Hard to find way back. But some are very simple, easy. It helps to understand. But this one is until it comes to the ninth chapter, it's very straightforward, simple, easy to understand, but more practical. There are a lot of things emphasize it over and over. That is important for us to not only to hearing, but we have to apply, we have to cultivate, we have to utilize with our life, And eventually we all wanted to be bodhisattvas. But when it comes to the ninth chapter, then it's very going into very philosophical, especially this the Shantideva. As a view is a madhyamika, In Indian Buddhist tradition, we have 4: madhyamika, Chittamatta, Madhya, mind-only school, and there are 2 others. But the Shantideva is Nagarjuna's. Nagarjuna is Shantideva's fan, and Chandrakirti is actually one of the Nagarjuna's main follower whose teachings are so emphasized on emptiness and madhyamika. So the sixth is all about wisdom. It's everything is about madhyamika. But until then, it's all paramitas, more practical. So basically, in the beginning of this Bodhisattva way of life says, the rest of the Bodhisattva way of life teaching is all for the next one, which is the ninth paramita. No, it's wisdom. I taught all those last 8 chapters for this, the 9th chapters. The rest of the 8 chapters are like branches, and this 9th chapter is the actual body of the Bodhisattva way of life's teaching. So his view is same as Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti. So in India, during that time, generally, of course, there are so many great masters, but in mainly the Nalanda University, there are 10 main masters. There are 2 for Madhyamika, 2 for mind-only school, 2 for Jedanava, and 2 for Ndode, but there are 8. 2 expert from each tradition. There are 4 traditions of Buddhism. So then there is a 2+1. Shantideva is expert on conduct, and then Chandrakirti is expert on view and Madhyamika. So those 10 are very important masters in India.
What is Shantideva now? Is he a Buddha? Is he a
I don't know. So he was a Bodhisattva during that time. I'm sure he's already enlightened. Yeah.
If you call his name, he comes in front of you.
I have never seen him.
You try.
Okay, I guess we should do the dedication prayer, and I hope to see you next week. And I hope you will try to find some more commentaries and read it and find some questions too. It will help all of us. Kundu zambu deyan dejen de da kunje jiso da lor gewan de da dam je rabdo.
Thank you, everybody. And next week we'll have some